Hello everyone, welcome back. Hope you guys are having a good day, a better day than I'm about to have. See, I'm currently on the indoor bike at home, getting in a quick little warm up, because you see right after this, I'm headed to a sports physiology lab, where I'm gonna be partaking in a lactate test. And lactate tests, they're not fun. For those of you that don't know, it involves pricking yourself, drawing blood while you are on the bike, exercising at, well, what ends up being a very high intensity. The way a lactate test works, at least the one that I'm doing, it's a ramp test. So you start off relatively easy, 100, 120 watts, and then every 5 minutes after the guy who's testing you, in this case, Dr. Broder, good friend of mine, that's actually why I'm getting a test done this week when I'm home visiting my family, is because I know the sports phys who will be administrating the test. But every 5 minutes, he's gonna be taking a blood sample, measuring my lactate, so we can determine my lactate threshold 1, LT1, and a lactate threshold 2, LT2. I guess I can give a short description right now, but I'll have him describe what those mean more once we get to the lab. But pretty much, LT1 is usually around 2 millimole, and that's usually what determines when you reach a level of intensity that you can sustain for a long duration of time, because you're at LT1. Once you reach LT2, once you cross that, or I guess LT2, that the power that you're riding at, once you hit LT2, which is the second inflection point when your blood lactate, and this is hard biking and trying to describe what lactate is. Okay, I'm just gonna stop it here. Editing Parker here. I was just watching this. I was actually doing a pretty darn good job explaining what LT1 and LT2 are. I was pretty impressed. Comment down below if you think I was doing a pretty good job. I should have kept going. But yeah, stay tuned. Dr. Broder gives a much more in-depth description of the definitions of LT1 and LT2 in just a few seconds here. I'll have him give the full description, or I'll put a picture up on screen or something like that. But I'm gonna finish up this warm up, and then we're gonna head to the lab for what will be an interesting test, especially since I actually just raced Ironman Texas 1 week ago. So I'm still not fully recovered from that, but since I am home, I thought, why not give this a shot? I mean, what's the worst that can happen, So yeah, see you guys at the lab. We made it here to the lab. We got Dr. Broder here now. I was gonna have Broder come on, and you want to describe kind of what we're gonna be testing today and what exactly we're gonna be looking for, measuring.
So, back in September 2022, we tested Parker, and we're getting ready to retest him, and we're gonna do true lactate threshold testing. That will include taking blood after he reaches steady state periods over 4 or 5 minutes of exercise at a given wattage. We're going to replicate everything we did the last time so that we can have a fair comparison. In the performance world, there's lots of definitions for lactate threshold, functional threshold, and all of that. In the science world, where I come from, the research side of it, true lactate threshold is measured as that point right before, in wattage, right before a person gets a rise in lactate greater than 1 millimolar. And so that tends to fall in line with what people call LTH1. lactate threshold 1. It's that period and that place where you can sustain very long exercise and not accumulate lactate at all.
Okay.
To speak of. You're using it as rate that you're doing. Then you get something called lactate LTH2, or lactate threshold 2 in some people's world. And when you're doing that, that more closely mimics what we in the science world call 4 millimolar point. And 4 millimolar is the maximum amount of watts that you can sustain without seeing a rise greater than 4 millimolar.
Got it.
And so we'll be doing that. That also can correspond well in a lot of highly trained athletes to their FTP numbers. In beginners, it's difficult for them to sustain that much lactate and reutilize it. Diet plays a role, training plays a role, and things related to how you process glucose, are you diabetic or not diabetic, can change all this. But in general, LTH1 is what you can sustain and do exercise for very long ultra-endurance-like events. The LTH2 is closer to your functional threshold, and it's more about how the maximum power you can sustain for events that require hard work, like the final climb up a Tour de France race.
Got it. All right, so we're gonna get set up and get to pricking myself. All right.
So this is a core temperature sensor. It measures skin temperature and using a special algorithm to get core inside your body. So people that can't thermally regulate well, this device can help you determine your heat stress score, training outside, and ways to train. Like I've been using it for like 30-40 minutes in the sauna.
I've been doing the sauna pretty much every day leading up.
I have an entire room of saunas.
And now what are these Moxie? What do these measure?
They measure how much saturated oxygen and saturated myoglobin, hemoglobin. They're going into the muscle, so it's primarily myoglobin. There's a little bit of hemoglobin. But, and there are 2 wavelengths that you pick up, whether it's saturated or unsaturated.
.1?
Yep, right now it is. See what happens. Determine how tired you are and a little bit. Your well glycogen a little bit.
Well, we had a good dinner last night, so.
So every 5 minutes it goes up 25 watts?
Yeah.
.9 millimoles.
Yep, same as last time.
Dropping a bit.
Yep, drop
Now,
it.
why does it drop at the start?
When you're not warmed up, depending on how your liver and glucose and insulin function are and what you've been eating, you will tend to have higher lactates.
No, because if the trainer adjusts to keep the watts constant, so if you spin faster, then you're not. You are not over. No, that's not bad.
It automatically affects line again, got the same lift on year 1. Yeah, everybody has these different places where they're more efficient. He's a hammerer, and when he's pushing these, he likes this big muscle thing.
Dude, that guy's on a hammer.
Yeah, so he.
Coming up.
I want you to get to the end of this stage. All in your head.
Minutes left to go.
Come on, it's all in your head. It's all in your head.
15 seconds.
I said 9.0. I said at least 9.
Yeah.
Once in a while I get lucky.
Whew. Well, it has been quite a few days since that very unpleasant experience, which was the lactate test. But since then, I've made it back to Austin, Texas, back in much warmer weather. Got my great friend Will Watson here in the background. And now, Will, you actually did a lactate test too, didn't you? Yeah, how'd it go? Wasn't too fun, was it?
It's not fun.
No, it's not fun. It's not fun. And the first few minutes aren't bad, but then by the end of it, as you guys saw, I went pretty much till failure. I hit 325 watts for 5 minutes, which is actually the exact same stage I failed at last time. And I think if I didn't do an Ironman 7 days before that test, I would have been able to make it to the next. Still having trouble talking. That test really wiped me out. To the next stage. But I don't know if I would have been able to hold 350 watts for 5 minutes. That would have been quite a big ask. Maybe next time. I will be doing another lactate test here, I don't know, in a few months or so. But I thought I'd hop on here and kind of go over the test results. I actually just got off a phone call with my coach, Natasha, and Dr. Broder, the scientist who, administered the lactate test. And he sent over a PDF, a little PDF document with all my test results and a quick little summary. So I thought I would go over that with you instead of just playing the 45-minute call that we just had, because I don't think you guys want to sit through that. But let me pull up the results right here. I'll do a little screen share so you guys can see what I'm looking at. And what's cool is that he actually graphed the results from this previous test that I just did a few days ago, and also he compared that to the test I did back in the fall of 2022. I think I did it in September. Is it on here? No, the date isn't on here, but sometime in September, I think, or maybe it was October. But here, I'll show you guys. I'll share the screen recording now. There's all my Fast Foodie reviews. Speaking of which, check out my Fast Foodies YouTube channel. Link will be down in the description box below. But here we go. We have the lactate data right here. can't highlight it, but this is the graph, the lactate data, and right next to it we have the MOXIE data, which shows blood oxygen concentration in my muscles. We'll go over the lactate data first. The green line is the most recent test, and the blue line is the test I did earlier, or I guess last year. And as you can see, at the kind of the lower watts, I guess leading up to, he kind of shows it or goes over it right here, up to approximately 265 watts, I was able to sustain those watts at a lower lactate level, which is good, and that makes sense because for the last 3 months or so, I have been focusing on Ironman specific work, which is targeting watts between 200 to 265 watts, that range. So it would make sense that that range would have increased, or I can sustain those levels of wattage at a much lower lactate levels than before. However, if we look at the higher end, I was holding on to a bit more, or buffering more lactate, I guess. So I wonder if the Ironman has anything to do with that, because I would assume, since I definitely was not fully recovered from it, I was carrying some more fatigue, which is actually present in the MOXIE data, which I'll get into right after this. But yeah, Dr. Broder pretty much wrote that 12.8% lower was my lactate concentrations, which is good to see, because 12.8%, I mean, over 3 months, that's a good amount. So in another 3 months, if I can get another 13%, just keep compounding that. That's very exciting to see. And as you can see, he writes, these results indicate better lactate balance per cycling watts for the current test results, which is good to see. Now, moving on to the MOXIE data, we see here that Dr. Broder wrote that I exhibited lower SMO2 values for the given wattage compared to my previous test results. So at first I was a little bit confused at what the watts per muscle oxygen saturation, that's what the SMO2 stands for, meant. But then I kind of thought about it a little longer, and it makes sense. So if we decrease the bottom, so watts per muscle oxygen saturation, so if we decrease the bottom number of that equation, so the muscle oxygen saturation, then the value, the result, is going to get bigger. And so as we can see here, the watts per SMO2 gets bigger, which was a result of my muscle oxygen saturation being lower. And Dr. Broder wrote that based on his data from a group collected on world-class half and full Ironman athletes, Red Bull athletes, we can see that can happen for when an athlete is still recovering from a full distance Ironman event, and or when their training intensity adaptations allow them to buffer lactate better and tolerate higher lactate concentrations. In Parker's results, these results may be a combination of both, and I would assume that it would be, because I was definitely still recovering from Ironman Texas, and I do think I can buffer lactate a bit better than when I first tested. At submit watts, I'm not sure if that's a typo, but I was 2 to 5% less saturated on the current test, indicated that I may need more recovery time before doing the current test. At the same time, because Parker was able to produce a greater amount of lactate on stage 7 and 8, which was past his LTH2 upper threshold, these indicates that his HIIT interval training work was allowing him to tolerate greater lactate levels while sustaining lower muscle oxygen saturation levels as low as 20%. We have observed this in elite half Ironman triathletes in world-class form. They sustain maximal watts at muscle oxygen saturation below 10% for several minutes. So pretty much, I'm gonna be like Christian Blumenfeld in another month or two. No, just kidding. But no, pretty much all the data shows that training is going pretty well, and I need to recover more from my Ironman. At least that's what I got from this test. I'll definitely be doing, as I mentioned, more tests with Dr. Broder. This was very insightful. Another thing that Dr. Broder touched on was my cadence. Pretty much said I ride at too low of a cadence. I need to ride at a bit higher of a cadence. That will increase my efficiency and also allow me to run off the bike a bit better, which, yeah, who doesn't want to run off the bike faster? So I'm going to be working on cadence, and I'm also going to be working on more of that top end work, because as we can see, I have been progressing very well in the Ironman side of things, but yeah, my weakness is definitely at that 70.3 Olympic distance power. So that's what I'm going to be targeting here this summer, as well as some more of that maximal effort style of training, which I'm very excited to do. No more 30-40 minute intervals, hoping to cut those down to 2 to 5 minute intervals as some 5-second max effort. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of my lactate test more than I enjoyed doing the actual lactate test. And yeah, catch you guys in the next video. I think actually maybe in Canada for the next video, which should be lots of fun. Check out the video of my what's next video. That's where I kind of go over everything and anything that's related to triathlon and what's going to be coming to this future channel, or to this future channel, what's coming in the future to this channel. There we go. See you guys in the next one. Well, when's your next lactate test?